Once again, our nation is rocked by another mass shooting. And I know this is coming a little bit late, but some of the facts have come out, and we still do not have the manifesto. So we're going to talk about that. But join us as we discuss our culture's decay as we stray further every day. Howdy, my name is Jonathan Fiala for Further Every Day, and we got only a couple of people in the room tonight. We got Clint, the chair of philosophy. How's it going?
It's going good, guys. Going good.
Glad to have you there.
Glad to be here.
Mr. Steve in the chair of culture.
Yes, sir. I'm going to run up and down the street in the chair of culture here, and then I'm going to every now and then kind of stray over and be politically incorrect on occasion.
Yes, sir. So the biggest problem, by the way, go ahead and pull that mic up a little bit closer to you. Just a little bit closer to you.
Okay.
Yeah, there you go. Good.
There we go.
Perfect.
Yeah.
One of the things that I think we ought to start off with is, and it's interesting, and this is, and it's not a aha gotcha moment, but the claim is that, let me ask y'all, what is the claim that most of these shooters are? It's exclusively what kind of people are doing all the shootings?
Democrats. This is just
Far right,
extremists. What you said was accurate, Clint, actually. And it's leftists. It's leftists. Everyone under the leftist umbrella. But what you have is you have Islamic supremacists. Mm-hmm. You have Islamic supremacists. You have white supremacists, which, by the way, is not an artifact of the right.
Correct.
You want to know who Adolf Hitler said, their work was and Goebbels and Goering and those folks said your works are a Bible. It was the Democratic left, the likes of Margaret Sanger and her buddies in the eugenics movement. So just to say white supremacism is not an artifact of conservatism. It has nothing to do with it. It has always been of the left. So when you start to see that in the mind, but then also you see this anti-Christian animus. And, by the way, I'm not really big on reading people's manifestos that they put out there, and there's a good reason for people kind of avoiding that. However, I think it's really important to remember that the Columbine shooting. Do y'all remember what those gentlemen did to that one girl who was on the ground? They said, "Where's your God now?" And they wanted her to renounce God.
Mm-hmm.
And she didn't.
She didn't.
And then you want to know, Virginia Tech. People forget about Virginia Tech, and that was one of the worst ones. That was the first time. I don't know about y'all, but that was the first shooting that really, for me, just cemented. Oh my goodness, this is still happening. This isn't like a one-off. This is becoming a problem. And I'm not going to use the piece of human debris name. But he did write some interesting stuff. I think it's worth noting what he wrote in his manifesto, and it was primarily his hatred for Christians. Primarily his hatred for Christians, and you got to remember with him, he did not have an AR. He had 4 pistols. He did New York reloads, and let's see if we can find this here. He goes, "Congratulations, you succeeded in extinguishing my life." This is to Christians. "Vandalizing my heart wasn't enough for you. Raping my soul wasn't enough for you. Committing emotional..." I'm not going to keep reading. It's really rough. But he was talking to Christians. And it's kind of wild. And then what do we have here at the Covenant shooting?
They don't want to... They keep telling you that... What they keep telling the press is they don't have an idea of what the person's intent was and why they did it. They can't figure it out.
Except this individual went to school there. Her mother and father, there was some sort of estrangement, by the way. We don't fully understand the whole extent of that. Broken home of some sort. By the way, that is like, that's the MO.
One of the number one things in the checklist for shooters like this.
So it's almost as though we do kind of have an idea of what causes it. Radical ideology. By the way, like the, I forget if it was the New Zealand or if it was the El Paso incident. That individual was an eco-fascist. very much not a right wing, even though they talked about how much they disliked brown and black people and Muslims.
Mhm.
And of course, there was the New York shooting in Buffalo, and they said, "Oh, well, that's a white supremacist. Therefore, it is an artifact of the right."
Correct.
But there's a problem with that, isn't there? Because they talk about the alt-right. People, if you don't know who the alt-right is, the alt-right and alt-left, those two are combined, by the way. That was an American way of classifying the European left and the European right, because they were so far to the American left that they had to be classified, because you had the people who wanted they owned the means of production, but you could still have private property, the Nazis and the fascists. And then you had the people who owned everything, including your body and your soul, the communists. But that was so far to the American left that we had to have an alt left and an alt right. An alt right person still wants free healthcare. They still want restricted borders for a social safety net. They're worried about the browning of America because they're racist snobs and they want to have their own money for themselves. They do not want to share it because not because that it's their money, it's because that race is inferior by their standards. You don't believe me? Just look at who they were buddies with in the 30s when we sterilized 60,000 Americans because of their undesirableness. By the way, led by people like Margaret Sanger. So let's go over a little bit of the facts, and we've got a quick news clip from the Covenant School shooting, and it's kind of a rough thing to talk about, and it's sad. And one of the things that I really feel bad about is that we lose in the noise the idea that
This is Adam Mincer.
we actually all want to fix the problem, but we lose sight of it and we say that we don't know what'll work and what does and what does not work. But the problem is we kind of do know, and we're gonna get to the stats in a little bit. But let's go ahead and look at it. This is a bit later on, after this news report comes after we found out that it was no longer, it was a total of 7 dead, including the shooter, 6 without. So let's go ahead and watch that.
This is Adam Mincer, is at the Alert Desk bringing us new information. Adam, what can you tell us?
Hey, Bob, I've been looking into the Covenant School, trying to get more information on the background and what we know from the school. And Neil brought up this point a short time ago. The school was established in 2001. It is a Presbyterian church, so it does call into question whether or not the shooter attended as a student in some regard, given
She did.
that we know she was in her late 20s.
We know
This
now.
is a small private school, Christian. They have daily chapel. And as you guys have been talking about, a very small school. The school has about 209 students and about 40 or 50 staff members, so all pretty close, all knowing each other in probably a very intimate community. It is, as we've been saying, preschool through 6th grade. And there are some opportunities for financial aid, but it is, of course, a tuition-based school. Tuition, according to their website, about $10K to about $17K, depending on what year.
That's important.
And so
Talk
we're
about that
also
later.
learning more information. And then the Metro Nashville Teachers Association is just releasing a statement as well with solidarity with the school so far. So we'll bring that statement to you in a short time, and I'll send it back to you guys at the desk.
Okay, so let's go ahead and talk about a couple things there, because there was a lot to digest there. First off, she did go to that school, and she talked about how much she did not like those people, did not like that she referred to herself as he, him, and of course the media fell all over themselves
All over.
trying to deal with that, and I find
They
that to be
were falling
unfortunate.
all over each other so much that they couldn't stand up.
It was kind of sick, actually.
Yeah, it was.
Like, I'm sorry, you kind of lose the right to self-identify after you murder 3 children and 3, teachers at a school.
Yeah.
You know, what I found to me offensive was the fact that I saw on YouTube. Now, I guess shouldn't surprise me, but an excerpt where there was a trans group. I don't know where they were on. They were either on some news station or whatever, and somebody was posting this, and they were defending this shooter because they were a trans person and they were the victim in this situation, not the people who were killed. They were not the victims, but this trans person was the victim because of, they're being bullied and they were this and they were what that, and, various talking points that they throw out there about the trans movement problems that go on or whatever. But they were making that person the victim.
It's almost like they don't care so much about the issue as they do about the ideology, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's going to play into it more, because we're going to talk about how that's a private school, and there are bills that will potentially fix this that have been suggested, and the reason for them being blocked was because of the ideology, and we'll talk about that more later. But keep going on that thought.
I mean, think about this, John Arthur, and you too here, Joel. Think about this. We are not we, but these people are thinking, and this is a thought pattern if you think about it. They're thinking their rights as a trans person are more important than the life of a small child that is anywhere from between 6 and what age were they're talking kindergarten to what age? I mean,
yeah. I believe it's a K through 6.
I think they were saying
6.
to what age?
K through 6.
K to 6th grade.
K to 6.
So 6 to 11 years.
Yeah.
Really? That we're talking that those rights are more important than one of these children's right to be able to live.
Well, if you want to kind of sort of, I don't know, if you want to clap back, and it's, you got to be careful. Like, I do not want to get into arguments with people about this, right? For the sake of arguing. But if someone is becoming gross and unkind about it, and if there are other people around and you have to say, look, I'm going to make an example, like, you're wrong. If they say, well, don't misgender the person. It's like, so wait a minute. We're talking about a murderer. It used to be that if you murdered someone, we would spit on your grave. I'm not even doing that. I'm just calling this person by their biological pronouns. And I'm sorry, it's just, it happens naturally. It's not even necessarily a slight. It's just, she was a troubled woman. And by the way, the stats, link in the description below, if I can remember, Ryan, remind me, 40% of individuals who are suffering from transgenderism are not only are they suicidal, but 25% suffer from schizophrenia. You're looking, there is no other demographic where you have people suffering from a higher rate. Slaves in America and in the Middle East who live today, by the way, there's more slavery in the world today than there ever has been. Those people do not have a 25% schizophrenia rate, 40% rate of suicidality. Those people don't have that. You don't have people who are offset, there is no other place. Jews in the Holocaust did not have that. You have, think of any oppressed, marginalized group, the Japanese Americans that we put into internment camps here in the States because of FDR, because he was a Democrat racist. Those people did not have a 25% schizophrenia rate, 40% suicidality.
Correct.
And you don't want to talk about that. You want to affirm and push and glorify that. And then when someone brings up the question of you know, they're just talking about it, and they said, look, this person's a troubled person. You want to focus on her fixation, on her dysmorphia.
But are we supposed to live in her make-believe world also? She lives in this make-believe of, you know, I'm a man, I'm a he, him, whatever, and I have this make-believe idea that I'm a guy.
Yeah.
Well, we all know that's not possible, so it's make-believe. She's got this idea that but am I supposed to live in that world also? Really?
What I find really
You know what I'm
insane,
saying?
and I don't want to be too rude about this, but John Arthur was mentioning that how we talk about the oppressed people not having PTSD, depression, all this stuff. Well, those people were actually oppressed without their consent. They were oppressed. LGBTQ people are free willing to move and want to be oppressed. They're living in a delusion. Is like, oh, I am, for example, if I consider myself a her, which I never would because they have multiple issues, I am putting myself up to being in a false reality. I want, that's asking for me to be bullied.
Plus, I'm not going to live in your delusion anyways.
Exactly.
Joel.
I am forcing people to live in my own delusions. And if that does not go my way, the end result is that I'm sad because it's no longer going the way I want it to go. Life is no longer conforming to me. Well, then the end conclusion of life not conforming to you is that you're going to be sad because you're trying to look into a worldview that is no longer in reality.
Well, I think what you're really hitting at, Clint, is that basing your value on superficial external characteristics will always lead to a poor mental state.
Absolutely.
When your value is not in your image bearer of God status, you will suffer from that. And look, just because we've had 4 or 5 LGBT individuals as shooters in the last, I don't know, is it 7 or 10? People say
7 years,
that we're having this spate of LGBT shooters. It's like, well, to be fair, they are actually still represented about accurately to the population. I want to be careful that I don't overspin the tale. However, if you want to be serious about mental health, you want to be serious about what these people are actually suffering from, there's no reason to beat around the bush on this. In fact, doing that, I believe, is harmful. And just to move a little bit further, it goes down to, and I'm not saying it's an LGBT issue. I'm not saying it's an LGBT issue. I'm actually saying it's something different. It is a lack of, bear with me, you're going to say, no kidding, Sherlock. It's a lack of godliness. And there's a reason I say that.
No kidding, Sherlock.
There's a
I was wondering if you were going to do it if I was going to do it.
there's a reason to say that, but I'm not talking about obviously the death and the destruction. I'm not talking about that. But you look at the fatherless homes, and that's the predominant fatherless or absentee fathers. You look at it's approximately 80 to 90% of shooters come from a fatherless home. And you have the rampant lack of understanding in the media about this. There's no desire to talk about that because it's unpopular, because this came out of the 1970s. And by the way, 1960s, 1950s, we did have mass shootings. We did have workplace related shootings, but they were minimal. You only had a few every year.
And they were done by either a him or a her at that time.
True.
One or the other.
True.
Right. You could classify it as that during the earlier days.
Correct. But if you look at the upward trend, what you'll find is that actually, since this is a trend from the 1982 year all the way up to 2023, and obviously 2023 is just starting, so it's a little bit low. We have time. Unfortunately, the year's young.
Why would you say that?
But well, it's just the truth. So you look at what happened there. You saw this divorce, this great divorce between the Bible in schools, godliness, and we're seeing a generation that grew up in that. And we started to see it in Columbine, and that was the first place. And they were grossly anti-Christian. They were specifically anti-Christian. You look at the Virginia Tech shooter, specifically anti-Christian. You look at this most recent shooter, specifically anti-Christian. And yes, school shootings are actually a minority of shootings. People don't realize that.
Right.
People don't realize that. They are a minority because the majority take place in the workplace. But before we get to that, I want to go ahead and pull some stats here from the crimeresearchcenter.org. This is a really good resource here. Types of guns used in mass shootings. So before we go further, I just want to get into the lie of AR-15s. So here's one of your facts. AR-15s are used in these mass shootings, and getting these weapons of war off the streets will stop mass shootings. Well, 56.4% of mass shootings as of March 15, 2023, were committed with handguns, murders in general. So, I was correct. I read the stat correctly. Mass shootings committed with handguns. Like Virginia Tech was primarily with handguns. By the way, Newtown was with handguns. Okay, the one that Alex Jones got in trouble with. Those were primarily handguns, and they reported an AR-15 in the media. They had it all prepared. It's like all these guys on all these news outlets, they have these AR-15 stories ready, like what an AR-15 does to the human body, how it explodes in the body, how it does this, how it does that. They have all of that prepared, and they release it within hours while the bodies are still warm. So you know that it's an agenda, and you look at the Newtown one. I believe it was Newtown. It's one that Alex Jones got in trouble for. I'm having an aneurysm. Just look up real quick. Alex Jones in trouble for school shooting. Just remind me which one that is, Mr. Producer. Thank you. But he had a Sega 12 shotgun in the back of the car, and that's what they called an AR-15. So. It shows their gross lack of knowledge of what the firearms are. But B, it also says that they have a motive. And we're going to get to the angle for the Christian on this, because this is a Christian apologetics channel. This is not a politics podcast. It's not what this is. But we want to lay everything out, because protecting you and your family is important. And also being able to articulate it, because people say, you're a Christian. How could you possibly be pro-life and want to own a firearm? Let's get to that question. Let's get to those questions real quick. But before we do, murders only with shotguns, 3.2. By the way, a whole bunch of the mass shootings in schools were done with shotguns.
Yes.
So it's a significant amount. 3.2% were done with shotguns. Handguns and shotguns account for 9.6%, where they would do a New York reload. Murders only with rifles only account for 14.9%. And surprisingly enough, 12.8% are murders only with rifles. Handgun and rifle, 12.8%. 14.9% murders only with rifles. All three types of weapons only had 3.2% in representation. So let's scroll a bit further down. How many, for those on audio, Mr. Steve, how many mass shootings occur in gun-free zones by statistical percentage?
6%
occur not in gun-free zones.
Oh, not.
Yep.
94%
occur in gun-free zones. So that says something else. You look at the Aurora
Yes.
shooter, you read what he wrote, and guys, I read it so you don't have to.
Oh.
It's sick, it's disgusting, it
not
turns
a
my stomach.
gun-free zone.
But he went to multiple places. And by the way, the Covenant school shooter, just here's another fact for you. She actually was considering another place to shoot. In addition to this, However, she wrote down security would be a concern. Security would be a concern.
Yes.
It's almost like it's a deterrent. Interesting.
Because people want to do it the easy way.
Yes.
Yeah. If you're going to make a spectacle out of murdering people, you want to do it with as few armed guards around and as few armed people. So percentage of mass public shootings between 1998 and 2023 in gun-free zones. Again, you're looking at 16% were done in not gun-free zones, and 84% in gun-free zones. And that is a more modern stat as opposed to the 1950 through 2023.
You're right.
So, predominantly men. 97% are men. I don't know if Aiden or Ashley, whatever the heck her name was, fits into that. This most recent Covenant shooter. But under 21, 18% of mass shooters are under the age of 21. That's going to be important in a moment because they say the number one cause of death in America for children is guns. But there's a bit of a bait and switch there.
I thought it was drugs.
There's a bit of a bait and switch there. Let's get there. 21 to 30, 32%, 31 to 40 age range account for 22% of mass shootings, and it goes down from there. So now this right here is a shooting by states, and the density from 2010 to 2023, you're looking at mass shootings per million people by state. And Washington, D.C. has the highest at 1.4 something per capita per million people.
Well, Washington, D.C.
And
people.
who did Alex Jones get in trouble for on the mass shooting? So type in mass shooting Alex Jones school lawsuit, and you'll figure it out. It's what? Sandy Hook. Where was that? Was Sandy Hook in Newtown? I thought it was Newtown, Connecticut.
Up northeast.
You got to get that mic closer there.
Wasn't that up on the northeast coast?
Yes, sir. I believe it was in Connecticut. So Sandy Hook, where? Just Google that for me. Thank you. Right. So, is in Connecticut. Okay. Newtown, Connecticut. Good. I'm not losing my mind. Okay. Fact check me. Always fact check me in the comment sections. Thank you for you guys who do. But anyway, with that said, it's important to note that they will come out and they will say, when you say that Democrats are or leftists are primarily the issue, PolitiFact. Well, it's PolitiFact. It's a fact, and it's political. It's PolitiFact.
Yeah.
Why don't you believe it?
Political facts.
So they rated Claudia Tenney, a Republican rep. So many of these people that commit these mass murders end up being Democrats. Well, they go on to say this is not true. Because, she was speaking to the radio host from Albany, New York on how to prevent future mass shootings when she made the claim. It's interesting some of these people commit mass murders end up being Democrats, but the media doesn't talk about it either. So they go on and they say, okay, mass shooters since Columbine, there's no universal definition for mass shooting. That's actually true. Okay. It's we're going by 3 to 4, depending upon whose stats we're using. That's the typical. So they're going to use 8 here, more than 8. And so they said that Omar Martin was a registered Democrat. So they go on to list the Democrats, which is really funny to me. Chris Harper Mercer said he was a Republican, but there's no evidence that he was one way or the other political. Aaron Alexis, was more of a liberal type, stated by his friends. Politicians were most often. By the way, you look at Abraham Lincoln, you look at Robert Kennedy, you look at Ronald Reagan. Who were they shot by? Democrats. I'm just saying it's not about Democrats. It's about the philosophy that's underneath. I'm just saying. I'm just putting it out there.
It's not the person, it's a philosophy.
It's a philosophy. Okay. But they said it's liar, liar, pants on fire, and they keep going.
Right. They put them pants out
because James Holmes was a registered Democrat. Devin Patrick Kelly was linked to anti-fascist groups, although they debunked that claim, although we're debunking the debunkers right now because the debunkers are wrong. Who's going to debunk the debunkers when the bunkers need debunking?
You lost me at bunk.
Yeah, well, that's what it is. It's all bunk.
Not the
all
debunkers.
bunk. It is all bunk. So, with that said...
Especially when you're bunking.
So, Stephen Paddock, Okay. Stephen Paddock, we don't know exactly what happened. And by the way, I'm just going to say something. Stephen Paddock, that is heck of suspicious. Like, how does he die? How does he kill himself and end up underneath one of his guns that's on a bipod for the photo op? Just tinfoil hat moment there. Just saying. No, he's going to do it. Okay. We're going to keep going. Adam Lanza was from a Democratic household. Nicholas Cruz
I was wondering
was a Democrat.
when that guy was found laying underneath his
Rifle.
underneath his rifle
With the bipod set up like
the
over him.
bipod over the top of him when he was the one that was supposedly
It's like agents.
shot that gun.
If the
with
guy
that
was
gun.
room temperature when you guys
He's
started
dead.
shooting from the streets or whatever, at least don't put the bipoded gun over the fellow. Like, make it more realistic. We think
where he fell away from it or something, you know.
you think
make
the
it a little
CIA,
more
with how much we pay
legitimate.
them, you think with how much we pay the CIA, they would frame up a mass murder of Americans a little bit better. Anyway, canceled.
We're all on the list now.
Cancel.
Why would you do that?
We've always been on the list. So is it relevant? Mass shooters are rarely motivated by political agenda. Oh, unless of course they have political grievances.
Wasn't that one El Paso dude super mad? So he went down and killed every Mexican. He had a list of Mexicans that crossed the border, and he went down
Yes.
one by one to shoot all of them out.
So saying it's not political is
Wow.
like saying it's not moral.
Must have been anti-Catholic or something.
He was upset that they were allowing Mexicans to come over to the border.
Oh, okay.
So again, you've got Dylan Roof, South Carolina, the Charleston. By the way, he was going to shoot somewhere else up. And then he decided on the church because he decided that was too much security. By the way, go look it up. Fact check me. By all means, I ask you to. And, you know, he happened to be extraordinarily racist. By the way, if he had been a Republican, you know, we would have heard all about it.
Right.
They would never have shut up about it. So all that to say, and they go through and they say that, you know, there's no proof, but you look at the statistics, you had mentally ill people. And that's where I want to really go to. The mental illness and the pure lack of care for these people that we see on the left. And there is a mental health crisis. And yes, it's going to sound trite. It's going to sound silly, but they need Jesus. And also the reason why is because you look at what's happening in the household. God didn't make stupid rules. God didn't make stupid rules. When we kick the dad out of the home, you look at 80-90% of those men who are doing these come from broken homes. Where do they get the example of a godly father, of a fatherly God? And by the way, if you don't believe me, you talk to sociologists. Your interaction, your relationship with your dad will directly affect your relationship and your idea of what and who God is. If you do not watch that, that will affect. It has a natural tendency to affect your view of the world, of the universal structure that's over you. Your relationship with your father has a direct impact on how you think about God. And so if God is not there, if dad is not there, and that's not part of your foundational structure, what's left over? I know you got thoughts, Clint. You're stroking that imaginary beard there.
So I find it interesting that if we look at their worldview and we take it to the absolute conclusion, every mass shootings is okay. And that, I know, I've had both of y'all, all y'all stare at me. But if we take what their thought process is and put it to the absolute conclusion, shooting people is okay. Because what deems murdering someone for my own reality wrong? What then is to say that I am incorrect if we have no moral standings? If everything's subjective to them, right? If we can all come to an agreement of this is wrong, then yes, right? But for us Christians, we have someone that says murder is wrong. Because thou shalt not kill, I like King James Version, but I think they got that wrong. It's thou shalt not murder. because we can have legal murder.
The word in the Bible in the Hebrew specifically says, "Do not take life that is innocent. Do not shed innocent blood."
And if we follow that, then shooting up a school is wrong. But otherwise, who's to say that shooting up a school is wrong? Because if my neurological flares is just, if that's all we are, right, is neurological flares, then why is shooting up a school bad?
And so there's going to be some people who are immediately jumping on that, and they're saying, well, wait a minute. Are you telling me that I need to have a God to tell me that it's wrong to shoot up a school? Yes. And the reason why you think that that is wrong is because you were raised in a Judeo-Christian culture. The reason why, and let me back it up a little bit, because let's form that universally. The fact that you do not go and kill other tribes, in a sense, and they're young, that you need a God for. And let me explain. Because you look at the cultures, the Sino and the Asian cultures, where they did not have the influence of the gospel for a long time and godliness for a long time, it was very much okay to kill women and children in the village. And it took years, it took centuries, millennia for the West to grow out of that, to grow up. It took years for that to happen. And that only happened because of the Judeo-Christian ethic. You only saw that. You don't believe me? Look at World War II. The Germans would come in, they would destroy, they would ruin, they would rape and pillage. But they would not do it to the women or the children, or if they did, it was an action of one or two people, and it was put down by the superiors. Right? Whatever they did, it was put down. Even the Germans. Now, I'm not talking about Mengele, not talking about the experimenting, not talking about that. But there was, even in their twisted, sick worldview, there was a line. Go back over to Vietnam. There was no line. There was no line. That's
Right.
why it screwed up so many of our boys, because they were not ready to fight in that world where they would have to kill the women. They would have to kill the children because it was wrong. It was something they knew that was killing innocence is wrong. You need a God in a godly culture to form that. If you are an atheist and you say, do I need a God? Yes. Just go look at the cultures that do not have the Judeo-Christian God and say, your tribe maybe, because that's expedient and that's part of your social contract. And I agree with you. The social contract is partially correct. But to understand that it's wrong universally, that there is a universal principle that's not applied just to you. Yes, you need a God. Sorry, you do. You don't need a God
Agreed.
to be a moral person. You just need to live in a moral culture and pick up some of that. But you need the God for the morals.
Correct.
Mr. Steve.
I would agree with you on that. The Jesus we have shows the morals and the principles of living a righteous life. I mean, he came and he proved that himself, being God himself and being sinless and the Lamb of God of,
And he changed the world.
and changed the entire world and changed my life late in life, but it changed. That's for sure.
And changed the Western world. You would not have
Amen.
hospitals. You would not have mercy. The idea of mercy was always a weakness. Mercy was always weakness in the Middle Eastern culture. And in the West, it was still a weakness until Jesus came and changed. The idea of not-for-profit hospitals, that really comes, that is straight out of the Jerusalem, and someone like Ben Shapiro would say Jerusalem and Rome, right? Or Jerusalem and Athens. Okay, yes, Athens was good and everything, but the Enlightenment really had its kernel coming out of Israel and coming from a godly Judeo-Christian perspective. So, wrapping up thoughts for the day, because we are at the end of our time. Clint.
I'm going to say something and it's going to make y'all upset, but let me explain.
Should I backhand you now?
Oh, I should probably
Shit.
back up before I say it. But the LGBTQ community that you were talking about did stay correct. She was a victim.
Of a bad ideology.
Exactly. They both were victims because due to what they've been through, and they didn't follow Christ, and they didn't look towards him and let the world corrupt their mind and let the world corrupt them, they fell out. And yes, there are victims, but not of bullying, not of the world, but of
Sin.
sin.
Oh, well, I'll agree with you on that one.
Mr. Steve?
Agreed. I would say, like I've always said, people need to get out and live the best life they can, get into a church, get into a Bible-believing church that preaches the Word of God, study the Bible, not just read it, but study it, get into a good study group,
Amen.
learn what the Bible has to say, just like with this Easter coming up, all of the seasons that go along with it, everything that goes along with Easter, the festivals, the feasts that go along with it, the meanings behind them, and get out and vote, man. People vote. I know you hear me say this a lot, but you need to vote, people.
It makes a difference. And here's the thing. The people who have always supported gun control for bad reasons are going to come out and they're going to say, don't you hate kids? Just some facts you can remember. I'm trying to give you 5 or 7 facts real quick. Democrats were the ones who came out with that gun control to control slaves.
Correct.
They were the white supremacists who hated the black and brown folk.
The Ku Klux Klan people also.
That's the ideology,
Yep.
exactly. And that's the ideology that specifically believes that some people are inferior and they do not need to hold guns. By the way, that's you. That's you. If you're listening to this, that's you. And they are the ones predominantly, the leftist is predominantly the one who was doing this. So it's not you. You're not crazy. You're not wrong for wanting to protect yourself. Do not give ground, because they will come for you and your children someday. And the only thing that's keeping them from doing that right now is because they are scared of you. There will come a day where you will have to set aside every defense that you have and lay down your life for Christ. I don't know if that's going to be this generation or next generation or next week. Understand that day may come. When that day comes, give your life in a way that is honoring and pleasing to God. But until then, I'm going to hold on to every little bit of dignity and integrity for my family's sake and for my sake, because it is not us. It is absolutely people who are in bondage to sin. And that is the last thing I will leave you with. This is an issue of bondage to sin. Remember that these people are captives. Even if they are doing the evil deeds, they are captives to sin. Remember that. And there is grace that can be dealt in a firm manner. Make sure we carry ourselves accordingly. If you like this podcast, you know what to do. If you didn't, smash the dislike button twice. Thank you, Rumble. You guys are growing. Thank you for over 180,000 downloads on the audio. We appreciate it.
All right.
And keep those coming. YouTube, we see
Yes,
what you're
sir.
doing. We're growing on Rumble. Thank you. Thank you for letting us know.
YouTube, they kind of like
But
messing
YouTube,
with us.
YouTube keeps deleting views, by the way, for those of you
Yes.
who are just figuring out what we're talking about. That's okay. God bless you. Thank you for letting us know that we're right over target. We love you so much. Have a wonderful day. Bye.
Bye.
All right. If you're still here, you are a super listener, or we put you to sleep. Going around the room, what is going to be your panic purchase for a firearm? Mr. Steve,
Oh,
What
my
gun?
panic purchase for a firearm.
make it fast. We're out of time.
Probably an AR.
An AR.
Yeah, probably with short barrel.
Clint, what do you want?
A lever action rifle.
You just want a lever action?
Yeah.
Just cause?
Just because they're cool.
I want another. I want another 300 blackout. I want to suppress. I want to suppress 300 blackout.
Yeah.
That's what I want. That's what I want.
They are suppressed.
Tell us
Probably
what,
10-inch barrel.
Tell us what you guys are going to get down in the comment section below. From our Dead Cold Hands. Later. Bye.
Yep, bye.
Toodles.